The Edinburgh to London sleeper train pulled away from Waverley Station at precisely 11:40 p.m., carrying Sean Connery and 47 other passengers into the Scottish night on what should have been a routine 8-hour journey south. At 79, Sean had specifically chosen the sleeper service to avoid the hassles of flying. No airports, no security lines, no photographers lurking behind pillars, just the gentle rhythm of wheels on track and the privacy of his own compartment. But as Sean settled into his first class cabin, he became aware of raised voices coming from the corridor outside. Through his slightly open door, he could hear what sounded like an argument between a passenger and the conductor. "I'm sorry, miss, but there's nothing I can do," came the conductor's apologetic voice. "The booking system shows your reservation was canceled. Without a valid ticket, I can't allow you to remain in this cabin." "But I never canceled anything." The voice belonged to a young woman, clearly distressed. "I paid for this ticket 3 weeks ago. I have the confirmation email right here on my phone." Sean found himself unable to ignore the conversation, partly out of natural curiosity, but mostly because he recognized the particular desperation in the young woman's voice, the sound of someone whose carefully laid plans were disintegrating through no fault of their own. "Miss, I understand your frustration," the conductor continued, "but our system shows the ticket was refunded to your credit card 4 days ago. I'm afraid you'll need to purchase a new ticket or disembark at our next stop." "I don't have money for a new ticket, and the next stop is in the middle of nowhere at midnight. Please, there has to be some mistake." Sean stood up and opened his door fully, stepping into the narrow corridor where he could see the situation clearly. The young woman appeared to be in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and clothing that suggested she had dressed hurriedly. Her backpack and small suitcase sat at her feet, and she clutched her phone with the desperate grip of someone whose digital proof meant nothing in analog reality. "Excuse me," Sean said politely to the conductor. "I couldn't help but overhear what seems to be the problem." "Mr. Connery, sir," the conductor replied, clearly recognizing him, but maintaining professional composure. "This passenger's reservation appears to have been canceled in our system, though she claims she never requested a cancellation." Sean turned to the young woman. "I'm Sean, and you are?" Emma Patterson." She looked between Sean and the conductor with growing panic. "I'm trying to get to London for a job interview tomorrow morning. It's my first real break in journalism, and if I don't make it—" Her voice trailed off as the implications became clear. "What kind of journalism?" Sean asked gently. "Investigative reporting. I've been freelancing for 3 years, barely scraping by, and finally got called for an interview at The Guardian. It's everything I've worked toward." Sean felt something stir in his chest, recognition of the particular desperation that comes when opportunity and disaster collide at precisely the wrong moment. "Conductor," Sean said, "what would it cost for Miss Patterson to purchase a new ticket?" "First class accommodation would be £340 sterling, 0 pence, sir. Though we do have some second class seats available for £180 sterling, 0 pence. Sean saw Emma's face crumple at these figures, clearly understanding that such amounts were impossibly beyond her current means. "Right," Sean said decisively. "Put Miss Patterson in the empty first-class cabin next to mine. I'll cover the cost." "And Mr. Connery, you don't have to—" Emma began, but Sean held up a hand. "Nonsense. Consider it an investment in journalism. The industry needs more investigative reporters, and missing interviews because of computer glitches is a terrible way to lose talent." The conductor processed the payment efficiently, handed Emma a new ticket, and disappeared down the corridor, with obvious relief at having resolved the situation peacefully. "I don't know how to thank you," Emma said, tears of gratitude and relief evident in her eyes. "I'll pay you back, I promise. It might take time, but—" "You'll pay it forward," Sean interrupted. "Someday when you're established and successful, you'll help someone else who's caught in an impossible situation. That's how these things work." "But why? You don't even know me." Sean considered this question as the train rocked gently through the darkness. "May I tell you a story?" Emma nodded, clearly still processing her sudden change of fortune. 30 years ago, I was supposed to fly from New York to London for what was potentially a career changing meeting with a director. Weather grounded all flights, and I was stranded at JFK Airport with no way to make my appointment. Sean gestured toward Emma's cabin door. Shall we continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable? These corridors aren't designed for extended storytelling. Emma's cabin was identical to Sean's, compact but elegant, with a fold-down bed, small seating area, and window that revealed the Scottish countryside rushing past in the moonlight. Please continue, Emma said as they settled into the small chairs. I was sitting in that airport watching my opportunity disappear when a complete stranger approached me. He'd overheard me on the phone with my agent, understood the situation, and offered to help. What did he do? Chartered a private jet, said he was flying to London anyway for business and I could catch a ride, wouldn't accept any payment, just said he believed in helping people reach their potential. Emma's eyes widened. That's incredible. Did the meeting go well? That meeting led to one of the most important films of my career. It changed everything. And you never forgot the kindness. More than that, I learned something valuable about success. Real success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about using your achievements to create opportunities for others. Emma was quiet for several minutes, processing this philosophy while watching the landscape blur past their window. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Of course. How do you know I'm worth helping? I mean, for all you know, I could be a terrible journalist or lying about the interview or just someone who's bad with money. John smiles at the directness of the question. You're right. I don't know those things. But I know something more important, which is I know that you care enough about this opportunity to travel overnight on a train you could barely afford, that you're honest enough to acknowledge you can't pay me back immediately, and that you're thoughtful enough to question whether you deserve help. Those are exactly the qualities good journalists need. But what if you're wrong? What if I fail anyway? Then you fail knowing that someone believed you were worth taking a chance on, and maybe that belief helps you get back up and try again. Emma pulled her knees up to her chest in the small chair, a gesture that made her seem younger and more vulnerable. I've been turned down for so many jobs. Editors who say I don't have enough experience or the right connections or the right background. This interview at The Guardian, it's the first time someone's said yes based purely on my work. What kind of stories do you investigate? Housing corruption, mostly. Landlords who exploit vulnerable tenants, city officials who look the other way, housing associations that spend charity money on executive salaries instead of helping people. Sean felt genuinely impressed. That's important work, not glamorous, but essential. It's what journalism should be about, speaking for people who don't have voices in the corridors of power. But it doesn't pay well, and it makes you enemies in all the wrong places, which is exactly why publications like The Guardian need people like you. Emma looked directly at Sean with sudden intensity. Can I tell you something I haven't told anyone else? Please do. I'm terrified that even if I get this job, I'll somehow mess it up, that they'll discover I'm just a girl from a council estate in Manchester who doesn't belong in the same room as real journalists. Sean recognized the particular pain in her voice, the imposter syndrome that haunted anyone who had risen above their original circumstances. Emma, Sean said gently, do you know what makes someone a real journalist? Experience, education, connections. Curiosity, the willingness to ask difficult questions and keep asking until you find the truth, the courage to write stories that matter, even when they're inconvenient for powerful people. I have those things. I can tell. And more importantly, you have something that can't be taught. You understand what it feels like to need someone to fight for you. That perspective will make your reporting more compassionate and more accurate than anything you could learn in journalism school. Emma was quiet again, but this time her silence felt contemplative rather than anxious. Can I ask you one more personal question? Big things. Do you ever regret not having a normal life? I mean, all the fame and recognition must be extraordinary, but did you ever wish you could just be anonymous? Sean looked out at the darkness rushing past their window, considering this question with the honesty it deserved. There are moments, he said slowly, when anonymity seems appealing. When you want to help someone without it becoming a story, or have a bad day without it ending up in magazines, or just sit quietly in a restaurant without being interrupted. But but then I remember that fame is just a tool, like money or education or any other form of influence. What matters is how you use it. Is that what you're doing now? Using your influence to help me? I'm using my circumstances to help someone reach their potential. If that's influence, then I'm grateful to have it. Emma pulled a small notebook from her backpack and began writing. I hope you don't mind, but I want to remember this conversation exactly. Not for a story, this is private, but for myself. For when I doubt that I belong in rooms where important decisions are made. What will you remember most? Emma paused in her writing, pen hovering over the page. That success isn't about proving you're better than other people. It's about using your position to help other people be their best selves. That's beautifully put. And that kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing you can do because it requires you to believe in people even when they don't believe in themselves. Sean felt moved by Emma's insight. You're going to be an extraordinary journalist. How can you be so sure? Because you understand that journalism at its best is an act of service. You're not trying to make yourself important. You're trying to make important things visible to people who need to see them. As the train rocked through the British countryside toward London, Emma and Sean continued talking about journalism, about the responsibility that comes with any form of public platform, about the courage required to ask questions that others would prefer remain unasked. When Emma finally excused herself to try to get some sleep before her interview, Sean remained in his cabin, feeling unexpectedly energized by their conversation. He had boarded this train seeking simple transportation. Instead, he had encountered someone who reminded him why his own success felt meaningful, not because of what it had brought him, but because of what it allowed him to give others. The next evening, Sean would receive a text message. Got the job, starting Monday. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Promise to pay it forward. Emma. 6 months later, Emma Patterson's investigative series on housing corruption would win the British Press Award for Public Interest Journalism. In her acceptance speech, she would thank a stranger who became a friend, who taught me that the most important question any journalist can ask isn't what story will make me famous, but what story needs to be told. But perhaps the most meaningful outcome would come 2 years later when Emma would use her position at The Guardian to create an internship program for young journalists from underprivileged backgrounds, ensuring that other talented writers wouldn't miss opportunities simply because they couldn't afford train tickets to interviews. Wasn't just a railway journey. It was the discovery that sometimes the most profound destinations aren't geographic, but human, and that the most important connections we make happen not despite unexpected circumstances, but because of them.